Okay, Eagles Nation, welcome. Nick Sirianni, in the middle of contract negotiations with the Philadelphia Eagles, and is looking for an extension on his contract, as he's due. Coming off a Super Bowl title, this man is going to go to the table and suggest to them, hey, you got to pay me a little bit of dinero here, right? So my question for everybody out here is Nick Sirianni a top 5 head coach in the National Football League? And does he deserve top 5 head coaching type of money? Does he deserve to be paid like a top 5 head coach? Because I think if you look at his track record and you look at his resume, and I'm going to lay out some of the stuff out here in the first part of this episode, you're going to have to look at this track record and say, well, damn, that's an overwhelming yes to being paid like a top 5 coach and being a top 5 coach in the National Football League. He's got a winning percentage of 70%. That's only behind guys like Guy Chamberlain, John Madden, Vince Lombardi, and George Allen. Again, Guy Chamberlain was in the 1920s in a completely different league, the American Professional Football Association. John Madden with the Raiders literally was at minimum in the conference title game and only didn't make it in the conference title game in 3 of the seasons he's coached. He either won the Super Bowl, got to a conference title game, or got to a Super Bowl in the rest of the seasons. Vince Lombardi with the Packers in the 60s and 70s, who literally, the Super Bowl trophy is literally called the Lombardi Trophy. The man was winning championships every single damn year virtually. It's why they call it Title Town in Green Bay, okay? And then George Allen in the 60s and 80s was on a run with the Rams, with Washington, in different leagues all across the country. The man had a winning percentage of 712. Nick Sirianni has a winning percentage of 70.6. 5th all time, the highest in the NFL. He has a regular season record of 48-20, a 6-3 record in the postseason. Has led this team to 2 NFC title games, won both of them, and is 1-1 in the Super Bowl, with just recently kicking the Chiefs' teeth in. At minimum, you get to a wild card berth with Nick Sirianni, and the only team that's beaten them in the wild card round is the Bucs at Tampa Bay. And since being head coach for the Philadelphia Eagles, not only is the winning percentage there, not only is, the success there, he was hired as an offensive coach because he was a wide receiver coach in Indianapolis. At minimum, this Philadelphia Eagles offense, in terms of points scored during the season, minimum is ranked top 12 and top 14 minimum in yards. His head coaching tree speaks for itself, as he brought in Shane Steichen. He brought in Jonathan Gannon, who both became head coaches after the 2022 season and are running programs with their respective teams in the Indianapolis Colts and the Arizona Cardinals. And then just recently, Kellen Moore became a head football coach for the New Orleans Saints, and we'll see what his record's going to look like as he gets his opportunity. And guys, when you look at the track record, when you look at that resume, and you're going to look at some of the other resumes of some of these other coaches who are getting paid here, you have to look at him and say, yeah, he deserves to be a top 5 head coach. A better winning percentage than Andy Reid, a better winning percentage than Sean McVay, a better winning percentage than Kyle Shanahan, than Dan Campbell, than John Harbaugh, than Mike Tomlin, than Pete Carroll, than Mike McCarthy. I mean, you name it. I'm naming some really damn good coaches. Matt LaFleur. There's some excellent coaches here. And he has a higher percentage than all of them. Now, I know you're going to say he's inherited an incredible roster. Don't give me that shit. Kyle Shanahan had an incredible roster. Andy Reid had an incredible roster. Sean McVay has had a good roster. Matt LaFleur had a great roster. You can't get John Harbaugh had a great roster. Jim Harbaugh had a good roster. So don't tell me that the roster is going to. Of course, the roster is going to dictate whether a coach wins games. You got to put these guys in position to win games. Nick Sirianni has done that better than almost anybody in the National Football League since he's taken over. It's a phenomenal track record. So just by that alone, you got to look at this guy's resume and say, you know what? You got to concede. He's got the record of a top 5 head coach. He's literally, among active coaches, in terms of winning percentage, the winningest head coach in the National Football League. Has a Super Bowl title, went to 2, has made the playoffs every year as head coach, albeit he has the collapse on his resume. And we're gonna get into that in a little bit on why this can get a little interesting in terms of the contract negotiations. But overall, you got to say yes. Top 5 head coach and deserves top 5 head coaching money. Guys like Andy Reid is making $20 million. Sean Payton's making $18 million per. Mike Tomlin, $16. Jim Harbaugh for the Chargers, $16. Sean McVay, $15 million. Kyle Shanahan, $14 million. Harbaugh for the Ravens, $12 million. Dan Campbell's making $11. McDermott's making $11. And Mike McDonald for the Seahawks is making $9. Again, maybe you don't want to say he's Andy Reid in terms of the payment. $20 million is a lot of money for a guy like Nick Sirianni. As good of a coach as Nick Sirianni is, I don't think anyone twists that Andy Reid might be the best coach in football because he's responsible for building culture, building offenses, building a methodology for winning offensively in the National Football League. He did it with the Philadelphia Eagles. He's now doing it with the Chiefs. But listen, outside of Andy Reid, you cannot show me your resume in the NFL that Nick Sirianni doesn't stack up against. Sean Payton, Mike Tomlin, John Harbaugh, Sean McVay, each of them have a Super Bowl title on their resume. Sirianni has one too. He's got a better record than Dan Campbell. He's got a better record than Sean McDermott, Matt LaFleur, Mike McDaniel, Mike McDonald. I mean, there's a lot of coaches here that he's got a resume that you can stack up with. You got to give the man his flowers. Top 5 head coach in the National Football League. Which now brings me to my next question here in regards to Philadelphia. Not only about just the contract negotiations, whether or not they're going to pay him, but what is the archetype for the type of head coach that wins football games? Because we have this notion, this preconceived idea, and it's right, and to a degree, it's right, that you need an offensive play caller to be able to win and optimize winning in the National Football League. So you need a guy like an Andy Reid, a Sean Payton, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, Matt LaFleur, Mike McDaniel. You need guys who are able to call an offense. Jim Harbaugh, for example, can call an offense if he had to, right? Those are the guys that everyone believes you must have to pair with a young quarterback so that way you can win football games long term. We're going to kind of analyze that in just a moment, but before we do that, we're going to introduce the show. This is the Riding the Bench Eagles podcast. I'm your host, Asif Badi, and like you, I am a Birds fan who talks about the Birds, only the Birds, and nothing but the Philadelphia Eagles. So please do us a favor here. Help us grow this channel organically by shooting this video a thumbs up, commenting your thoughts in the comments section below, and subscribing to the channel. Also, check us out on audio platforms such as Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and leave a 5-star review because it doesn't cost you a damn thing, and it'll help me get out to as many people out there, in not only on the World Wide Web, but on audio platforms. So we thank you for your support. Hit that like button. What's the archetype for a head coach in the National Football League to win games? We talked about play calling head coaches. Sean McVay, Andy Reid, Kyle Shanahan, Jim Harbaugh, Matt LaFleur. All these guys call their offense. All these guys call plays. And everyone believes if you pair that coach with your quarterback, you're winning games. Outside of Andy Reid, because he has Patrick Mahomes, Sean McVay only has one Super Bowl. Kyle Shanahan doesn't have a Super Bowl. Mike McCarthy is the only other is one of the only other head coaches with a Super Bowl title in the National Football League. He just got fired from the Cowboys, but he was a play calling head coach. Sean Payton has a Super Bowl title with Drew Brees. I mean, do you really need a play calling head coach to win in the National Football League? Think about some of the guys who have won Super Bowl titles and whether or not they were actually calling their side of the ball. Now, Bill Belichick for a while was, again, and is regarded as the greatest coach in all of football and the greatest defensive mind the game has ever seen. Okay? 2 Super Bowl titles with the Giants as the coordinator, and he has 6 Super Bowl titles as head coach for the Patriots. He wasn't necessarily play calling for the defense. He would come up with the schematics, he'd come up with the game plan and implement that game plan and get the whole roster ready to play. But that's not a play caller, that's a culture builder. Mike Tomlin, another example of a coach who doesn't necessarily have the role of play caller, but is a culture builder. He has a Super Bowl title on his resume. You look at a guy in, Bill Belichick, Mike Tomlin, John Harbaugh is another coach that's not a play caller. He's built a culture in Baltimore. And again, they have an organizational standard that they live up to every single year. But there's a culture there with John Harbaugh of excellence. Kyle Shanahan, another guy who not only is a great play caller, but has built a culture there. Sean McVay, another coach that's built a culture there. Pete Carroll, when he was in Seattle, built a culture there. Wasn't necessarily calling the defense, but built a culture. Jim Harbaugh hasn't had a Super Bowl title on his resume, but has won literally everywhere he's gone, a culture builder. How can we not say the same thing about Nick Sirianni? Right? Since he's been here, it's been the most winning in a short span that Philadelphia has had in a very, very long time. The culture that he's built here with the players and the rosters that have been constructed for him by Howie and Jeffery Lurie, they play hand in hand here. Here's my analysis in regards to Sirianni, this coaching staff, this culture in Philadelphia. I believe, despite the collapse in 2023, despite the fact, and I'm not going to be a hypocrite here, I believed at the time, if Sirianni's fingerprints were all over the game plans of last year of 2023, I was calling for the man to be fired. Like, it was horrific the way it looked. And even during this past offseason, a lot of the talk was, hey, Sirianni, don't touch a damn thing. Let Kellen Moore run the offense. Let Vic Fangio run the defense. Don't get in the way. During the 2-2 stretch we had in the beginning of the year, everybody thought the offense was anemic, the defense looked putrid. It looked like Sirianni's hands all over this damn game plan. And it was evident all year that people thought we're saying, hey, for the first 25 to 30 scripted plays, we're running an offense that looks so damn anemic. People were saying the quarterback was terrible. People were calling this offensive coordinator incompetent. They were calling Nick Sirianni's head to get his head rolled for the job that he was doing. Screaming at the fans, being emotional on the sidelines. And then after the bye week, we started winning football games, and we haven't looked back. And again, to the man's credit, the roster, everybody in Philadelphia on that roster loves Sirianni. They play for that guy. A.J. Brown, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Devontae Smith, Landon Dickerson, Jordan Mailata, Lane Johnson, all of them speak glowingly about Nick Sirianni. And you got to look at what he's done in the biggest games of the season. In both the NFC title games, you routed your opponent. Now, I know San Francisco was a little bit of a caveat because you knocked the quarterback out of the game, but that's not Sirianni's fault. He had his guys prepared to play, and they came out and decimated the Niners. And then you look at what they did to Washington. Albeit a talent discrepancy, he had them ready to play, and they put up their best offensive performance of the season. And then against Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl, crushed them 40-22 in the second round. And then the first time they played each other, put on a show in that game with Jalen Hurts' career game, the 38-35 loss. We understand that it was a heartbreaking performance by the Philadelphia Eagles. But again, it's the closest that Kansas City has ever gotten outside of the San Francisco 49ers. That game went to overtime for the Niners, but you get my point here. Sirianni has given everybody in the biggest games of the year a run for their money. And when you have better winning percentages amongst active head coaches outside of guys, better winning percentage than Jim Harbaugh, Andy Reid, Matt LaFleur, Kevin O'Connell, Sean McDermott, Mike Tomlin, John Harbaugh, Sean Payton, Sean McVay, Mike McCarthy, DeMeco Ryans, Dan Campbell, Kyle Shanahan, Doug Peterson. These were all guys throughout the offseason last year, throughout the regular season until we started winning games, that people were saying, hey, if you put those guys with this roster, what could happen? If you put guys with this damn roster, we wouldn't be 2-2. All this talk about the wins and losses. And then he goes out and wins a Super Bowl, having a better resume than guys like Sean Payton, Mike Tomlin, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, John Harbaugh, Dan Campbell, Sean McDermott, Mike McDonald, Mike McDaniel, Matt LaFleur, over the past 4 or 5 years since he's taken head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. The resume speaks for itself. Like you can't deny it. Now, Philadelphia, though, this is where the conversation, again, I know a little bit of a longer episode, and I promise I'm almost done. Philadelphia's belief in their philosophy, in that, hey, we did this with Andy Reid. We hire a good head coach. We win a lot of football games. We put Chip Kelly in. We won a lot of football games with him. We had Doug Peterson. We won a lot of football games with him. We bring on Nick Sirianni. We've won a lot of football games with him. You cannot tell me that the organization with Jeffery, Lurie, and Howie Roseman don't believe that they are not the sole reason that this team has had the percentage of winning and the stretch of winning that they have had since they have been together. Are you trying to tell me that when Howie Roseman doesn't have a stellar offseason, the Philadelphia Eagles are not in the Super Bowl? 2017, Howie Roseman put on a masterclass. They won the Super Bowl. 2022, he had a really great masterclass, an excellent offseason, acquiring A.J. Brown, Jordan Davis, putting together a roster of littered veterans, top to bottom, super talented. They got to a Super Bowl, had 70-plus sacks that year. And then this offseason, with the moves that he made, with bringing on Zach Bond for a cheap deal, bringing on Saquon Barkley, bringing on all these guys, drafting Quinyon, drafting Cooper, drafting Jalix Hunt, hiring Vic Fangio, and letting him hire the defensive staff he's got. Forcing Nick Sirianni to look at the offensive coordinator candidates and hire guys that have a track record in the NFL, bringing on Kellen Moore. Manipulating the cap the way that they do. Putting money up front that Jeffery Lurie does in order to acquire talent. You can't tell me that they don't believe in the bottom of their heart, in their soul, that they believe, hey, we could put anybody here. And if they just follow with the program that we instituted and we implemented here, we can win with any head coach we put here. And then it brings me back to the conversation we had in 2023 during the collapse. The question that everybody was asking, because everyone was so infatuated with the idea of having a play caller in here instead of a culture builder. What is Sirianni's job? What is the thing that makes him the guy to keep this team together, to not let the ship sink? That was the question. And in 2023, he did everything but answer that question. Added more fuel to fires, made small problems big problems. Nothing he did worked in 2023. But in every other season he has been head coach, you have to look at it and you have to say, hey, regardless of what you feel about him, regardless of what you think about him, everyone in the National Football League amongst head coaches, that head coaching fraternity, believes in this guy. Everyone in that locker room believes in this guy. He's got the track record now to showcase that he has now been there and done that at the highest level. The thing that makes Sirianni the unique coach he is for this particular roster came out of the words of our owner, Jeffery Lurie. And it's a bit of a head scratcher because it's a little oxymoronic. But emotional intelligence was the words that Jeffery Lurie used. Being the head coach of a football team, the CEO of a program, is not just about the X's and O's. It's not about the players. It's about maintaining a standard of procedure, a standard of excellence, a standard of practice where you come to work every day striving to be the best you can be and facilitating that. When players need guidance, when they need to be reined in, when they need to have more pep in their step to be able to draw out the best in young talent. And again, whether you think Vic Fangio is controlling the defense and Kellen Moore was controlling the offense, Sirianni was the guy whose name was put on that stamp. And he even said, whatever the result of this program, win or loss, it's got my name on it. Takes the bullet, takes the beating from the media for his players. The perfect guy to step in when the front office is taking heat. He takes accountability. And again, I find it nauseating when he speaks on the microphone. I do. But I will not deny what the man has done, especially this season. He was on one of the hottest seats in the National Football League, and when push came to shove, he cashed in and won a Super Bowl title for this city with this team. That's got to mean something. And not one time since his first 8 games as the head coach of this football team has he called a play. Not one time. He's given coordinators opportunities to call plays. He designs the offense, implements the game plan, gives it to the coordinators and says, do your job. Call the game. I'll manage it. And to his credit, for the most part, he has managed every game he has been the head coach of this football team relatively well. again, having a play calling head coach is overrated. It does not necessarily equate to immediate success. The thing that you need as a head coach, and again, it sounds cliche, but it's the truth. It's to be able to galvanize a group of men, put them on the same page to achieve one common goal. And you're dealing with men who have mortgages, families, kids, who are elder in terms of sports years, who are 30s, in their 20s, in the prime of their athletic career, and then young bucks, rookies who are 21, 22, 23-year-old children. You have to get all of these men of all different walks of life, different circumstances. Hell, you got to get your head coaches, assistant head coaches, the owner, the GM. Everybody has to be on the same page. And they got to listen to one voice in that locker room. And for the Philadelphia Eagles, for the past 4 years, there has been no better voice for this team in its franchise history in such a short span since Nick Sirianni. Whether you want to admit it or not. So does he deserve top 5 head money? Yes. Is he a top 5 head coach in the National Football League? You got to say yes. And is the question of, do you need to have a play calling head coach in order for you to have success and win at the highest level? No. Bill Belichick didn't call plays. Mike Tomlin didn't call plays. Pete Carroll didn't call plays. None of those guys. Some of those guys have some of the best winning percentages in all of football. None of those men called plays. Nick Sirianni has not called a play. Has the highest winning percentage among active coaches in the National Football League and has just come off a Super Bowl title. And many believe his team next year is going to be the betting favorite to come out of the NFC once again. Respect is respect. Better resume than Kyle Shanahan. Better resume than Sean McVay. Better resume than Mike McDaniel. Better resume than Matt LaFleur. All of those guys are play calling head coaches. There's nothing left for me to say other than that you got to look at the man's resume and let it speak for itself. He's going to get $18 to $19 million per year. That's what the market dictates for a man who has that kind of resume. Because you have to pay him more than Sean Payton, and you can't quite pay him like Andy Reid. And he's going to be worth every single penny. No matter whether you think like Jeffery, Lurie, or Howie Roseman, or whether you think like a fan who wanted him fired a year ago, like me. Nick Sirianni is a top 5 head coach in the National Football League, and he is worth every single penny that the Philadelphia Eagles are going to be forced to pay him. Hey! Thank you so much for watching the Riding the Bench Eagles podcast. If you want to continue to support the channel, please hit the like and subscribe button down below. Also, check us out on Instagram and TikTok at Riding the Bench Eagles Pod. We're also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, you name it, we're on there. Thank you so much for listening, and please join us next time here at the Riding the Bench Eagles Podcast.